Hi everyone, this is Mel Gabby, and this is an extra video to go along with this series around opening up your spirituality and your personal power. And I wanted to share some of the research that can help me think about what is kind of going on a much broader context. So, according to sort of general spirituality, the Pew Research says that 70% of adults in America describe themselves as spiritual in some way, and 22% spiritual but not religious. Nearly 1 in 3 Americans now identify as spiritual rather than religious, a notable increase in 18 to 33%. In 2022, New Age beliefs, the YouGov poll found that 87% of Americans believe that at least one belief under the New Age spiritualism, the umbrella such as karma, reincarnation, and astrology or telepathy, they believed in one of those things. It also reports that 62% of Americans hold at least one New Age belief, including the belief in spiritual energy, in physical things, psychics, reincarnation, and astrology. Spiritual communities, 14% of US adults say they are involved in a spiritual community, such as a group that helps them connect with something bigger than themselves. And 30% of Britons describe themselves as spiritual, with women 35% more likely than men to do so. And the proportion of people describing themselves as spiritual is relatively consistent across new age groups. So 46% of Britons believe humans emit positive and negative energy. 44% believe in karma. 39% believe spirituality and science can be combined for healing. 34% believe in energy points or chakras. 19% believe in crystals and that have healing properties. And 15% believe star signs impact personality. But women consistently more than men hold those beliefs. So what this is saying is in the US and the UK, significant openness to spirituality and New Age beliefs within the US show self-identification as spiritual. So these beliefs aren't just limited to organized religions. Many who are not religious still engage with spiritual and New Age. So the main reasons are a decline in the relationship with religions, especially younger generations, uh, aren't so keen on organized religion, and the decline in religious or traditional authority leaves individuals seeking new frameworks. And I discovered this when I was working in a lot of schools in our area. And what I found is having some kind of framework is massively helpful to our mental health and well-being. So it's kind of figuring out what you want that framework to be. And if it involves God, spiritual practices, religion, or what. It's about working out what you want to bring forward from your past and what works for you, what creates that ritual that, like birthdays, weddings, they've all got rituals imbued within them. So it's like deciding what rituals actually support you in your journey, like having a bath with uh, beautiful aromatherapy oils and salt baths. Um, every morning getting up and doing some yoga or going for a walk, how you put these things in your life that support you on your own journey, regardless of what the goal is. There's also a massive move towards individualism and personal fulfillment. And there's sort of arguments around that. I was watching some YouTube videos last night where they're saying this, the individualism and the self-interest has kind of moved people sometimes out of the traditional idea of getting married and having children. I believe that actually people need to work out what is starting to fit for them. Many women that I work with now are opting out of having children. They don't want children. They want to travel and focus on their career. There are a proportion of women that do want to stay at home, going back to the more traditional model. Proportion of men who prefer the traditional model, but actually value their being working as a team. So our ideas of relationships, how we have them, what they look like, are so imbued by so many different layers of our parents' relationships, if we experience divorce or trauma or domestic abuse or healthy, happy relations. whether we were the only child or the child of, many children within a family, what the messages and ideas are about dating relationships, where the pressure comes from, and the biology, because many women are aware that when they get to about 30, if they haven't had children, they want to, they start thinking about that. All of these things are meaningful and relevant. And sometimes going to see a therapist can help you start to unravel all of these different things that confuse you and get in the way. And if you're going through that experience, I would say go sooner than later. I've worked with a few people where really, had they gone and got some support to unravel what they thought and felt about things, they might have still been in their relationship and improved it, or exited that relationship much earlier so that they could actually pursue the ideal situation for them. So for me, there's no wrong or right. Um, and then there was just a couple of things I wanted to share, that a lot of these spiritual practices are accessed by people who can afford them, because even if a yoga class in the UK on average is £8 to £10, and there's lots of people who are going through the cost of living crisis. So there's a lot of free information online with yoga, meditation, mindfulness, personal development. There's lots of information out there, but actually being able to go somewhere and experience that with other people means that often you need to have money for that. And so it's not really an inclusive society if only certain people can access tapping into their own curiosity and sharing that with other people, because sometimes that's the part of our mental health. It's that developing connection supports us to feel good about ourselves and just less alone. And there's so much research that's come up about isolation and loneliness. And as I put in the intro video, I'm really aware of avoiding fake mystics, cults, and charlatans. So I'm going to give you some of the psychology on this now, okay? So active research areas and key findings are that behavioral psychology of cults and charlatans, researchers in psychology and related fields have extensively explored how cults, fake mystics, and charlatans recruit and retain followers. Studies highlight that these groups use manipulative tactics. Now, these are interesting words because they're very similar to some of the darker psychology of how people attract narcissistic and abusive relationships are love bombing, emotional manipulation, mirroring, loaded language, social proof, to build trust and dependency. And these behaviors are designed to exploit emotional vulnerabilities such as loneliness, not loss, and fragmented sense of self. And if you've watched any of the documentaries on cults, you can see how they looked at how these people were just going to a yoga class, listening to a talk. They liked the speaker, especially in what's it, MXLM? I'll look that up. XLM. Don't know if it's that one. I'll find that in a second. Of one of the movements that if started out as a personal development course, and it was teaching people how to tap into tap into their resources and build up new resources so that they became good at their jobs and happy in their relationships. But that personal development program ended up using tactics to get people to think that they need to spend more money on more courses and spend more time with the people there and less time with the people who didn't understand them in their families, and then more time on retreats. And so slowly, slowly, slowly. And I think it happened as the leader of that also became more skilled at working out that he could get more and more money from people. And it was like multi-level marketing. So common warning signs identified by researchers: excessive flattery or love bombing. When people are flattering other people, you've often got to ask yourself what's going on underneath that. Isolation from family or friends, that usually comes a little bit later. Using jargon or loaded language, massively used in NLP. And that's why NLP has a bad rap, because a lot of salespeople and marketing people are using emotionally loaded language all the time to get us to buy stuff. High pressure tactics to commit to time and money. It's you've only got 40, no, you've only got 3 hours to make your mind up. This offer won't come back again. It only runs once a year. Only a select group of people can join this select experience. Everyone else is doing it. Everyone needs to go. All of this. What I'm saying now, you must have heard it, especially if you're in the personal development field. A 5-day challenge turns into a 30-day challenge, turns into you know. So I'm also mindful of this when I'm working with people. So it's about not creating dependency and helping people develop their own autonomy, discernment, and capacity to say, okay, I've got enough out of that right now. They need to put the brakes on, carry on with their life. That's fine. And some people do need to sort of open up and not shy away from what they're finding difficult, but it doesn't mean to say that they continue in that same group. So if you get too starstruck and put people on a pedestal and think they are the greatest thing since sliced bread, you need to question why. Okay, you do need to look at that. And also we've got things like isolation from family and friends. They don't understand you. They don't understand the spiritual stuff. They're not awoke. They're not reaching higher levels like us. They're not chosen. These are all languages we use in the spiritual community in New Age development. So we've got to be mindful that we don't, there's parts of us that goes, I want to be special, I want to be chosen. These are deep psychological things that we've experienced since we've been babies, kids in the playground, being chosen for the team, not being chosen, not being special. So these are vulnerabilities, and it's good to really know about your own vulnerabilities. And then things like high pressure tactics, like I said, to commit time and money, public shaming under peer pressure to enforce conformity. This happens. What I found, I've ran a lot of groups, okay? And originally, when I trained as a therapist, I was working with adults, but I wasn't running groups, it was one-to-one. Then I started working in schools, and I was assigned to create programs and workshops aimed at helping teachers create programs and workshops for their kids who were vulnerable, struggling, had emotional issues, challenges at home, or at risk of being excluded. And I also created some as well. So I create some small groups, 8 to 10 students in primary school. And I also work with whole classes as they're in the last of the summer term, so that I could teach them about transition so that they were more resilient when they went to secondary school. But in that process, I also explored group dynamics and how we facilitate. And one of the things about setting up a group is you need to be mindful, as any therapy trainer can attest who delivers training on these courses, is all of us have blind spots. We all come with our personal history and baggage. We've all got something that's happened with our mum, dad, aunts. And it doesn't have to be deep stuff. If we look at adverse childhood experiences of being emotionally, mentally, physically, sexually abused, is the kind of big stuff. And I think that's 1 in 4, 1 in 7 people who have experienced that kind of trauma as a one-off or as a continuous experience. But also, we've had these other slight other experiences. So we go into this therapy training that opens this door to us understanding ourselves more. And we end up having to really consider the group dynamics. Who never speaks, who's always speaking, who talks over people, who is challenging people's ideas all the time, who's scared of sharing their ideas. So these characters can often represent people in our own families if you explore group dynamics. And so a healthy way of teaching and facilitating is to facilitate through sort of equality, really, that everybody gets the chance to speak, that we don't judge what's shared, even though we are going to sometimes. That's just normal. And give people time and space, know that they're on a journey and they're processing and they're having to tackle sometimes insight or flashbacks even. And where that starts to go wrong is in a lot of these spiritual communities. So I did a Kundalini retreat, for example. is Kundalini centers itself around. There's a lot of getting up at 4, 5 o'clock in the morning uh, to to do the sadhana and the mantras, the singing, and then there will be different workshops throughout the day. But what I liked about that, you could easily breeze through any of the workshops. When you go to a group that says, right, we're doing this at this time, you have to do this every day, and this is what's expected of you, some people go for that level of strictness. But that can be manipulated. And if you interfere with people's sleep and you keep pulling their minds through all of these ideas and loading that with, this is better, this is right, this is all of this can start to manipulate the consciousness of the people that are in there. And then if you get 9 people who all love the guru, all love the trainer, hate the trainer, love the trainer, and Ram Dass used to talk about this really eloquently in his video. Well, they're all audios, a lot of them, about his own experiences. And that's what I loved about listening to him. He was really self-aware and he was aware of what happened to him when his guru shared his time with other people in the group. And now we can feel jealous and angry and rage and all these normal human emotions that we often feel from the age of, 0, 1, 2, and 3. And we have these little rageful moments, and our parents come and say, no, no, it's okay, and help us understand. But if we've not been contained, if people haven't helped us understand, then we've got some work to do as well. So this can happen in groups. So if you're in a group and you're doing anything, and what I also noticed was time. So I found that my average number of sessions with many of the people I come into contact with was between 6 and 12. With young people, it was 3 for average. 3 sessions. What's going on? What do you want help with? Here's some tools, here's some insight. They become more empowered, they normalize their experiences, understand the brain, how to reduce their stress, all within a short period of time. Take that, feel more empowered, and then may pop in and out. Other students had deeper needs, and so that was also reparenting and teaching them some specific skills and to manage either living at home, being in dramatic environments, living with parents who were drug addicts, had mental health issues, personality disorders, things like that. So that's that sort of heavier stuff again. So let's put it on a continuum, the really serious and the mentally well and okay. And we oscillate between them, but our experiences of our parents and our families, we bring that into the situation. So if you feel shamed or any peer pressure, step back and look at that properly, okay? And then promises of secret knowledge, healing, or salvation, like the 144,000, okay? Psychological vulnerabilities are factors such as trauma, stress, lack of social support can increase your susceptibility. So if you've left home and you're not talking to your family and you're trying to manage on a really poor wage and you've got no friends, you are more likely to be drawn into these things. And if you go to things, just be aware of your own self-efficacy and autonomy. And that's where intuition comes in. You go, you explore, you listen to something, it feels great, you love the music, you love the chat, you feel the connection. But if they start trying to cajole you to go to things and you don't want to just yet, you've got to be able to stand your ground and feel okay with that without being shamed or guilt tripped. Because shame and guilt is often used by people trying to manipulate you. Experts recommend increasing awareness and education about these tactics as a key defense. Being able to recognize warning signs, asking critical questions, and maintaining strong social connections can help you resist psychological coercion and avoid falling prey to these fake mystics or cultic groups. This also applies to online dating, early dating, is you need to understand the tactics that people can use for more nefarious actions and goals. That's covered by, and I'll put some links below, quite a few really good people in the field that explore toxic dynamics, psychology behind behavior, and things like that. If you want to go a bit deeper, if you've already been manipulated or feel like that's going on at the moment, you need to look a lot deeper. Trust your intuition. work on your intuition if you're not sure what it is. And I will talk a little bit about that in other videos. Some researchers suggest broader psychological support systems and community education to address these vulnerabilities. So, in mental health work, or the 5 ways to wellbeing, which was a public health um, route to increasing the happiness and health of the population, was around creating systems that meet these different facets of well-being: enough money, happiness and purpose in your job, got connections so you can get some therapy, go to community groups. And there was a lot of funding that went into these different approaches so that that would support people in the community. So going anywhere is not a difficulty. It's about how people try and persuade you to stay there. Some of the top questions that people are asking, you might be asking, why does God, is there a God? Why does God allow suffering? Is there a purpose to life? How do I practice and think about my own spirituality? How can I deepen it? What is a spiritual discipline, and should I focus on improving? And how do I start practicing meditation? What is it? How does it work? How can I use these tools to reduce stress and anxiety, which is how I used to use a lot of these tools, because I was working in mental health and well-being, and we were helping people reduce their stress and increase their happiness and well-being. And then the meaning beyond materialism, lots of people, that's why lots of people are going down this route. We realize that we are just producing all this stuff and waste, and that is moving people in the past, in the future, towards more minimalism, buying less, being a less materialistic or consumer culture. How can I tell the spiritual teacher or practice is authentic? Can I identify as a false spiritual prophet? So I've used some of that. How do I avoid spiritual scams or cults? So I think there's a difference between somebody like me that practices yoga, meditation, teaches personal development, um, uses research to help you understand why a lot of this helped you to get past your own defenses and boundaries around those things, rather than just going to the doctor and maybe getting some pills. And someone who is setting up maybe a program of work and wants to attract a certain amount of people. And there's lots of people out there doing some really good work and introducing you to these things that definitely make a difference. It's and there's a big difference between someone who is just new to it, just done their Reiki training and getting used to connecting with that energy and offering healing and making sure that you know what to expect. So the contract around any of these services is really important to be aware of. What you're getting, how much you're paying for, how long does it last, what might be the outcome. And are you offering 3 sessions, 6 sessions, a one-off? Clarifying the contract right at the beginning of any services is useful. If it's a one-off, if it's a course, and then knowing that once you've done that, that you can say, no, that was great. I've got what I need right now. Or the same with the retreat. What is it you're looking for and why? And is this a match? Or is this person false and acting away, that isn't actually in everybody's best interest? At some point, spiritually, they can be blocked. People who are espousing ideas that are actually more nefarious and aren't good for the people, goes beyond soul journeys and soul learning and life lessons, regardless of what you think our reason is for being here. And then things like crystals, chakras, astrology, all of that. I've dabbled in all of that. I'm not going to teach all of that because there are people who teach numerology, gene keys, human design, information about crystals way better than I do. I'm just going to invite you that if you're into that already, I'll show you how to use that in this program. Okay, because all I'm interested in you is you finding your way through the fog and confusion. So that's it for this bit of research. And I've put in that there is a difference sort of between New Age spirituality and esoteric, because esoteric used to really refer to spiritual knowledge and teachers that were understood often by a small initiated group. So you have to be initiated into that and then learn the teachings of that group. And a lot of monks and certain spiritual paths still operate in that way. And slowly, like with Ram Dass, slowly you get introduced to more of these deeper ideas. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you accessing my videos and utilizing the information and leaving some comments, and contact me. Any questions, if you want to do the 3-day, 3 separate day approach, the Kickstart sessions, or you want to set up a 6-week or 12-week course with me, the link below to book the one-off, the Kickstarter sessions are below, and then we discuss moving forward from that. I don't do hard sells. If you feel attracted to my work, resonate in what I'm doing, and want to find out more, contact me and we'll go from there. All right, I look forward to working with you more.